The watchers above the void between stars held many secrets, but none more intriguing than the small blue world orbiting a medium-sized yellow star. Admiral Zethkar stood before the massive viewing portal of the Corellian flagship Dominators. Edge, his 6 arms folded behind his back as he studied the planet below. His silver-scaled skin reflected the soft glow of the ship's bioluminescent panels, and his large, multifaceted eyes tracked every detail of the world they had been observing. For 3 standard cycles, Admiral called Navigator Dexel from her station, her voice carrying the musical tones typical of her species. The survey data is complete. This world matches 73% of the parameters for a Category 5 civilization. Zethkar's head turned slowly, his neck extending in the serpentine manner of his kind. Category 5 civilizations were always interesting. They represented species that had discovered fire, developed agriculture, and begun to explore beyond their home planet, but had not yet achieved faster-than-light travel or energy manipulation beyond basic fusion reactions. Such civilizations were typically ripe for guidance from more advanced species like the Corellians. "Show me their current technological assessment," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had overseen first contact with 17 different species during his career. The holographic display shimmered to life in the center of the bridge. Images of the planet's surface appeared, showing sprawling cities, primitive aircraft, and most importantly, small metallic objects struggling to escape the planet's gravity well using chemical propulsion systems. "They call themselves humans," reported Science Officer Keltrus, his tentacles dancing across the bioneural interface. "Their primary language appears to be something called English, though they have thousands of different communication systems. They have achieved limited spaceflight, establishing a few small outposts in their immediate orbital space." Zethkar studied the images with growing interest. The humans had built what appeared to be a simple space station, barely larger than a Corellian escape pod. Their rockets were crude affairs that required enormous amounts of fuel to achieve. Basic orbital velocity. Most amusing of all, they seemed to celebrate these primitive achievements as if they had conquered the galaxy itself. "What is their political structure?" he asked. "Fragmented," Keltrus replied. "They have divided their world into nearly 200 separate territorial units, each with its own government. They engage in frequent conflicts over resources, territorial boundaries, and ideological differences. Their military technology is approximately 3,000 years behind our own." The bridge crew exchanged glances. This was a common pattern. Among young civilizations, they would exhaust themselves with internal conflicts while barely scratching the surface of their true potential. It was precisely why the Corellian Empire had developed the guidance protocol. "Admiral," interrupted Communications Officer Yalandra, "we're detecting increased radio chatter from their space station. It appears they may have noticed our presence." Zethkar's eyes narrowed. The Dominator's Edge was equipped with the most advanced cloaking technology in the known galaxy. For a primitive species to detect them was highly unusual, though not impossible. Sometimes younger civilizations stumbled upon sensor configurations that could penetrate basic stealth fields. "What are they saying?" he asked. Yelandra's translation. Matrix hummed as it processed the alien language. "They appear to be reporting an unidentified anomaly in their sensor readings. Their space station commander is requesting instructions from their planetary government." On the surface of Earth, Dr. Alina Vasquez sat in a sterile white room 3 kilometers beneath the Colorado mountains. Her fingers moved across a holographic interface that would have made the Corellians' technology look primitive by comparison. Around her, Dozens of technicians monitored screens showing data streams from across the solar system. Phase 1 is proceeding according to plan, she reported into a secure communication channel. The Corellians have taken the bait. They believe we're a Category 5 civilization struggling with basic spaceflight. The response came from Admiral Sarah Chen, currently aboard the hidden Earth Fleet command ship Invisible Hand, positioned in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Excellent work, Alina. Are they showing any signs of suspicion? None whatsoever. Our staged facilities are performing perfectly. They've observed our primitive chemical rockets, our struggling space station, and our limited planetary conflicts. Everything appears exactly as we want it to. Alina smiled as she reviewed the data. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for over 2 centuries. Ever since the first detection of alien signals in 2157, Earth's governments had secretly united to create the most elaborate deception in human history. While the aliens observed what they thought was a primitive civilization, humanity's real fleet was spread across dozens of star systems, their true cities hidden beneath ocean floors and inside hollow asteroids. The plan was simple in concept but staggering in execution. Let potential alien visitors see exactly what they expected to see: a young, struggling species that posed no threat and offered no competition. Meanwhile, humanity's real civilization would remain hidden until the aliens revealed their true intentions. Back aboard the Dominator's Edge, Admiral Zethkar made his decision. Open a communication channel to their space station. It's time we made formal contact. The bridge fell silent as the communication array activated. First contact was always a momentous occasion, even with a primitive species. The Corellian Empire had built its reputation on being benevolent guides to younger civilizations, helping them avoid the mistakes that had cost countless species their freedom or their lives. This is Admiral Zethkar of the Corellian Empire. He broadcast his words, automatically translated into the human language. We represent the Galactic Confederation of Allied Species. We come in peace, offering guidance and protection to your developing civilization. The response came faster than expected. This is Commander Michael Torres of the International Space Station. We ... We receive your transmission. Are you really aliens? The bridge crew chuckled at the humans' obvious amazement. It was always the same reaction. Young species were so shocked by the existence of other intelligent life that they could barely form coherent responses. Indeed we are, Zethkar replied patiently. We have been observing your species for some time. You show great promise, but you are still in the early stages of technological development. We offer our assistance in helping you reach your full potential. What the Admiral didn't know was that Commander Torres was actually Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos, a veteran of humanity's real space force with over 30 years of experience commanding interstellar vessels. She had volunteered for this assignment specifically because of her acting abilities. We ... we would be honored to receive your guidance, she responded, carefully injecting the right amount of awe and humility into her voice. Our people have dreamed of this moment for generations. Excellent, Zethkar replied. We will begin by establishing a monitoring station in your outer solar system. Our scientists will study your civilization and determine the best methods for your advancement. Do not be afraid. The Corellian Empire has successfully guided 47 species to full galactic citizenship. As the transmission ended, Alina Vasquez allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The Corellians had revealed their true nature with that single statement. They weren't explorers or diplomats. They were conquerors who disguised their intentions behind offers of guidance and protection. Every species they had guided had become a vassal state within their empire. But humanity had learned from the mistakes of others. Hidden deep within the galactic communication networks were the desperate final messages from dozens of civilizations that had accepted Corellian guidance. Species that had traded their freedom for advanced technology, only to discover too late that they had become slaves to their so-called benefactors. Admiral Chen, Alina transmitted, "They've taken the bait completely. They're establishing monitoring stations and beginning their standard guidance protocols." "Understood," came the reply. "All fleet commanders are to maintain complete communications. Silence. Let them see exactly what we want them to see. How long until they reveal their true intentions?" Elena consulted her historical analysis. Based on their past behavior, they'll spend 6 to 8 months evaluating our primitive civilization. Then they'll begin phase 2 of their guidance protocol, which involves technology transfers designed to make us dependent on their systems. "And that's when we spring our surprise," Admiral Chen said with obvious satisfaction. The next several months passed exactly as Alina had predicted. The Corellians established 3 monitoring stations in Earth's outer solar system, each one disguised as a small asteroid. They began transmitting educational materials about galactic civilization, basic scientific principles, and the benefits of joining the Confederation. To their observers, humanity appeared to be responding exactly as expected. Earth's governments publicly announced the alien contact and expressed gratitude for the Corellians' generous offer of guidance. Human scientists staged elaborate conferences, where they marveled at the basic principles of faster-than-light travel and energy manipulation. What the Corellians didn't realize was that humanity had mastered these principles centuries ago. Earth's real scientists were studying the aliens' technology and finding it surprisingly primitive compared to their own advances. The Corellians were indeed more advanced than the fake human civilization they were observing, but they lagged far behind humanity's actual capabilities. Admiral Zethkar reviewed the monthly progress reports with growing satisfaction. The humans were proving to be ideal candidates for guidance. They were intelligent enough to understand the concepts being presented to them, but primitive enough to be properly grateful for the assistance. "Sir," reported Science Officer Keltrus, "the humans have requested permission to visit one of our monitoring stations. They want to see our technology firsthand." "Granted," Zethkar replied. "Select a few of their most advanced scientists and engineers. Let them see what true galactic civilization looks like." The chosen humans were actually some of Earth's finest actors, each with extensive training in alien psychology and behavior. They boarded a primitive chemical rocket that appeared to struggle with the journey to the monitoring station, when in reality it was equipped with technology that could have transported them to distant galaxies in minutes. As they toured the Corellian facility, the humans expressed appropriate wonder at technology that their own children learned about in elementary school. They asked carefully scripted questions that reinforced the aliens' assumptions about human limitations while gathering crucial intelligence about Corellian capabilities. "Your energy systems are incredible," commented Dr. James Parker, actually a commander in humanity's real fleet who had been chosen for his convincing portrayal of a primitive scientist. "We can barely manage fusion reactions, and you've mastered matter-antimatter annihilation." The Corellian tour guide, a young engineer named Sixtel, preened with pride. "This is merely basic technology," he explained condescendingly. "When your species is ready, We will teach you to harness the quantum foam itself." Dr. Parker managed to look appropriately amazed while mentally noting that humanity had been using quantum foam manipulation for over a century. The Corellian version was actually quite crude compared to human implementations. As the tour continued, the humans gathered detailed intelligence about Corellian society, technology, and most importantly, their military capabilities. Every piece of information was carefully transmitted back to Earth, using quantum entanglement communicators that the aliens couldn't detect. The picture that emerged was exactly what humanity had expected. The Corellians were indeed advanced, but they had grown complacent through centuries of encountering only primitive species. Their technology was sophisticated but standardized. Their military tactics were proven but predictable, and their intelligence gathering was thorough but limited by their own assumptions. Most importantly, they had no idea that they were being observed in return. Hidden throughout the solar system, humanity's real monitoring stations tracked every Corellian movement, analyzed every transmission, and prepared for the moment when the aliens would reveal their true intentions. That moment was approaching rapidly. Admiral Zethkar had received authorization from the Corellian High Command to begin Phase 2 of the guidance protocol. Soon, they would offer humanity advanced technology in exchange for certain ... accommodations. The same accommodations that had enslaved 47 other species. But this time, things would be different. This time, the aliens had chosen to guide a species that was already far beyond them in almost every way that mattered. They had chosen to deceive a civilization that had built its entire first contact strategy around deception. They had chosen to underestimate humanity. The mask falls away 6 months after first contact. Admiral Zethkar stood in the same position before the viewing portal of the Dominator's Edge, but his mood had changed considerably. The humans had proven to be remarkably quick learners, perhaps too quick. Something about their responses to Corellian guidance felt subtly wrong, though he couldn't quite identify what troubled him. Admiral, called Navigator Vexor, were receiving the final authorization from High Command. Phase 2 of the guidance protocol is approved. We are to begin technology transfers immediately. Zethkar's head bobbed in acknowledgement, but his unease remained. In his experience, primitive species typically fell into one of two categories when presented with advanced technology. They either became overwhelmed by concepts beyond their understanding, or they became so excited by the possibilities that they asked endless questions about applications and improvements. The humans had done neither. They had responded with appropriate gratitude and wonder, but their questions had been oddly specific and their understanding surprisingly deep. It was as if they already knew the principles behind the technology being demonstrated. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Yalandra, "we have an incoming transmission from the human leadership. They're requesting a formal meeting to discuss the technology transfer protocols." "Put it through," Zethkar ordered. The holographic display activated, showing a middle-aged human woman with silver hair and intelligent eyes. She wore what appeared to be a military uniform, though the human's military technology was so primitive that Zethkar found it difficult to take their armed forces seriously. "Atmido," Sachikar, the woman said. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun, representing the United Earth government. We are deeply honored by your offer of technological assistance and wish to discuss the terms of this arrangement." Zethkar studied the human carefully. Her bearing was confident, almost too confident for someone representing a primitive civilization. "Admiral Chen, I am pleased to meet you. The Corellian Empire is prepared to share selected technologies with your people, beginning with improved propulsion systems and energy generation methods. That's very generous, Admiral Chen replied. We're particularly interested in your faster-than-light communication systems. Our current methods are quite limited. The request struck Zethkar as odd. Most primitive species focused on weapons or transportation when offered advanced technology. Communication systems were typically a secondary concern. That is an unusual priority, he observed. We believe that effective communication is the foundation of any successful interstellar civilization. Admiral Chen explained smoothly. Before we can properly utilize advanced propulsion or energy systems, we need to be able to coordinate our efforts across vast distances. The explanation was logical, but it added to Zethkar's growing sense that something was not quite right about these humans. Very well. We will include communication technology in the initial transfer package. However, as with all guidance protocols, there will be certain conditions. Of course, Admiral Chen said, we understand that such gifts come with responsibilities. Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the exchange with grim satisfaction. The moment had finally arrived. The Corellians were about to reveal their true intentions, and humanity would finally be able to drop the charade that had consumed so much time and resources. All stations, this is Control, she transmitted on the Quantum Entanglement Network. Phase 2 is beginning. Prepare for full revelation protocols. Across the solar system, humanity's real fleet began to move. Ships that had been hidden in the asteroid belt, behind the moons of gas giants, and in the shadow of the sun itself, started to take up positions. Each vessel was equipped with technology that made Corellian systems look like children's toys. Admiral, Zethkar was explaining the conditions of the technology transfer when something happened that changed everything. A massive explosion erupted from the surface of Earth, visible even from the Corellian fleet's position near Jupiter. What was that? He demanded. Science Officer Keltris frantically worked his controls. Sir, it appears to be some kind of industrial accident. One of their major manufacturing facilities has been destroyed. The explosion was unusually large for their current technology level. The transmission from Admiral Chen was interrupted by static, then resumed with the human woman looking concerned. Admiral Zethkar, we've just experienced a catastrophic failure at one of our research facilities. I'm afraid I'll need to cut this transmission short to coordinate our response. Of course, Zethkar replied, but his mind was racing. Something about the explosion troubled him, though he couldn't identify exactly what it was. Sir Keltris reported, I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures from the explosion site. The radiation patterns are ... familiar. Familiar how? Zethkar asked. They match the signatures of quantum cascade reactors, sir. But that's impossible. The humans shouldn't have the technology to build such devices. The bridge fell silent. Quantum cascade reactors were advanced technology that required sophisticated understanding of subatomic physics and precision. Manufacturing capabilities far beyond what the humans had demonstrated. If they were somehow using such technology, it meant either they were more advanced than they appeared, or they had been receiving guidance from another species. Yalandra, Zethkar ordered, scan the explosion site with our most sensitive instruments. I want to know exactly what caused that blast. Yes, sir, the communications officer replied, but as her scanners probed the distant planet, her expression grew increasingly confused. Sir, I'm detecting traces of materials that shouldn't exist on that planet. heavy elements that can only be produced in specialized manufacturing facilities. And sir, I'm detecting what appears to be hull fragments from starship-grade armor. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. If the humans possessed starship-grade materials, it meant they had access to advanced manufacturing capabilities, but more importantly, it meant they had been deliberately concealing their true technological level. All stations, maximum scan of the entire system, he ordered. I want to know about every piece of matter larger than a grain of sand. What the Corellians discovered in the next 30 minutes changed everything they thought they knew about the human species. Hidden throughout the solar system were installations that had been invisible to their sensors, manufacturing facilities inside hollow asteroids, military bases on the far side of planetary bodies, and most shocking of all, a massive fleet of starships that had been lurking undetected for months. "Sir," reported Navigator Vexel, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm detecting approximately 300 vessels of unknown configuration. They appear to be ... surrounding us." As if responding to her words, the human fleet began to decay. Ships larger than anything in the Corellian fleet materialized from empty space, their sleek hulls gleaming with energy fields that made the Dominator's Edge look primitive by comparison. "Admiral Zachikar came," Admiral Chun's voice over the communication system. But her tone had changed completely. Gone was the humble gratitude of a primitive species seeking guidance. In its place was the confident authority of a superior military commander addressing a potential threat. Admiral Chen Zethkar replied carefully, "It appears your species has been less than forthcoming about your technological capabilities." "I prefer to think of it as being cautious," Admiral Chen replied. "We've had extensive experience with species that offer guidance to younger civilizations. We've learned to be very careful about accepting such offers." The truth hit Zethkar like a hammer blow. The humans had been studying the Corellians just as intensively as the Corellians had been studying them. But where the Corellians had seen a primitive species, the humans had seen through their deception immediately. "You've been monitoring our communications," he said, the pieces falling into place. "For 6 months," Admiral Chen confirmed. "We know about your guidance protocols, your vassalization procedures, and your treatment of the 47 species you've conquered. We know about the resource extraction quotas, the population controls, and the technology restrictions you impose on your so-called guided civilizations." Around the bridge of the Dominator's Edge, the crew began to understand the full scope of their situation. They weren't dealing with a primitive species that could be easily manipulated. They were facing a civilization that had not only seen through their deception, but had orchestrated an elaborate counter-deception that lasted for months. "Sir," whispered Navigator Vexel, "what are your orders?" Zethkar studied the tactical display, where human ships now held positions that could destroy the entire Corellian fleet within minutes. The humans had demonstrated patience, intelligence, and most importantly, the ability to maintain operational security on a scale that spanned multiple star systems. "We withdraw," he said finally. "Signal the fleet to prepare for immediate departure." Admiral. "Zethkar," Admiral Chen's voice interrupted. "There's no need for hostility. We're not interested in conquest or revenge. We simply wanted to understand your true intentions before making any commitments. And now that you do understand," Zeth asked. "Now we can have an honest conversation," Admiral Chen replied. "We're prepared to offer you something that I suspect you haven't encountered in a very long time. A relationship between equals." The concept was so foreign to Corellian thinking that Zethkar had trouble processing it. The Empire had been the dominant power in their region of the galaxy for over 2,000 years. They had never encountered a species that could match their capabilities, let alone exceed them. "What do you propose?" he asked. "A mutual exchange of knowledge and technology," Admiral Chen explained. "We've analyzed your systems extensively, and while our technology is more advanced in most areas, you have developed some interesting solutions to problems we're still working on. We believe both our species could benefit from cooperation rather than domination." Dr. Elena Baskis, still monitoring from her underground facility, allowed herself a moment of pride. The plan had worked perfectly. Not only had humanity avoided enslavement, but they had turned the tables completely. The Corellians now found themselves in the position of being the less advanced species seeking guidance. "Sir," reported Science Officer Caltris, "I'm analyzing the human fleet configuration. Their ships appear to be using technologies we've never encountered. Quantum-locked hull plating, dimensional shift drives, and what appears to be localized gravity manipulation." Zethkar's 6 arms moved in a gesture of resignation. The humans weren't just more advanced. They were operating on principles that the Corellians barely understood. It was as if they had discovered entire branches of physics that had eluded Corellian science. "Admiral Chen," he said finally, "I believe we have much to learn from each other." The response came with what sounded like genuine warmth. "I'm glad you see it that way, Admiral. We've prepared a formal proposal for a mutual research agreement. But first, I think it's time we showed you what humanity has really accomplished." What followed was a tour that left the Corellian delegation speechless. Hidden cities beneath Earth's oceans that housed billions of people. Manufacturing facilities that could produce materials with properties that seemed to violate known physics. Research stations where human scientists worked on projects that boggled the Corellian mind. Most impressive of all was the revelation that Earth was just one of dozens of worlds that humanity had settled. Their fleet had been exploring the galaxy for over 2 centuries, establishing colonies, studying alien species, and gradually building a civilization that spanned hundreds of light. "How did you remain hidden for so long?" Sethkar asked, as they toured a massive space station that served as a hub for human interstellar commerce. "We learned early that it's better to be underestimated than overestimated," Admiral Chen replied. "When we first detected signs of alien civilization, we made a deliberate decision to remain hidden until we could be certain of their intentions. We've been watching species like yours for decades, learning from their mistakes and their successes." The tour continued for 3 days, during which the Corellians were introduced to a civilization that had not only solved the problems that had plagued their own society, but had developed solutions that were elegant in their simplicity and devastating in their effectiveness. By the end of the tour, Admiral Zethkar had come to understand that humanity represented something entirely new in his experience. A species that had achieved advanced civilization without losing their humility or their caution. They had become powerful without becoming arrogant, advanced without becoming complacent. "Admiral Chen," he said as they concluded their meetings, "I believe the Corellian Empire has much to learn from humanity." "And we have much to learn from you," she replied. "But this time, the learning will be mutual. No guidance protocols, no vassalization procedures, no hidden agendas. Just 2 civilizations working together to explore the universe and unlock its mysteries." As the Corellian fleet prepared to depart, carrying with them the first genuine diplomatic agreement they had signed in over 1,000 years, Admiral Zethkar reflected on the lesson they had learned. They had encountered a species that had mastered the art of strategic deception, not for conquest or domination, but for protection and survival. The humans had taught them that sometimes the most dangerous opponent was not the one who appeared strongest, but the one who appeared weakest while actually being the most prepared. They had shown that true strength came not from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to know when to reveal that strength and when to keep it hidden. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that the galaxy was far more complex and dangerous than the Corellians had imagined. If humanity could remain hidden while building an interstellar civilization, what other surprises might be waiting among the stars? As the Dominator's Edge jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's existence back to the Corellian Empire, Admiral Zethkar knew that the galaxy had just become a much more interesting place, and for the first time in his long career, he was genuinely excited about what they might discover next.